Have you ever wondered how the queen of the gods, the mighty Hera, a woman whose voice could shake the heavens, spent her eternity not in peace, but in pain? They call her the goddess of marriage, the protector of love and vows. But behind that divine crown was a woman drowning in jealousy, heartbreak, and rage. Up there on Mount Olympus, where Zeus's thunder ruled the skies, Hera's silence burned louder than lightning. Her heart, full of pride, her soul chained by betrayal. Some say she was just a jealous wife, but nah, that's not it. She was a goddess who refused to bow, a woman who fought back, even when destiny was stacked against her. While Zeus roamed the heavens and the earth, chasing mortal women and birthing new demigods, Hera watched and waited, and when she struck, it wasn't madness. It was vengeance wrapped in elegance. She cursed, she punished, she destroyed, not because she was cruel, but because every wound she gave was one she had already felt herself. Think about it. A goddess who had everything except love. A queen who ruled the skies, but couldn't rule her own heart. Tonight, we'll walk through her story, a tale of power, pride, and pain, where love became war, and even the gods weren't safe from heartbreak. So take a deep breath, let the world fade away for a moment, and drift with me to the ancient heights of Olympus, where thunder belongs to Zeus, but the story belongs to Hera. If you enjoy calm, mysterious, and emotionally deep stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next legend from the ancient world. And drop a comment below with your city and the time you're watching. Let's see where in the world this story finds you tonight. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be born into darkness? Before the light, before the thunder, before even the word queen meant anything. They say the gods remember that silence, the moment before creation, when the air itself held its breath, and the universe had yet to learn to speak. Long before Olympus crowned its rulers, there was only emptiness. Not noise, not chaos, but a vast stillness that stretched beyond imagination. From that quiet came the Titans, towering, eternal beings who believed themselves immortal. Among them was Cronus, the devourer of fate. He feared prophecy, that one of his own children would rise to overthrow him. So every time Rhea, his wife, bore a child, Cronus swallowed it whole. Hera was one of these swallowed children. Picture her, a flicker of divine light, trapped inside darkness so deep that even thought could not pierce it. No sound, no form, only waiting. And then, one day, that silence was broken. Her younger brother, Zeus, hidden by their mother, rose against Cronus. The heavens shook, the Titans fell. One by one, he freed his siblings. And Hera breathed for the first time, not air, but light itself. When she emerged, the cosmos trembled. Olympus was born anew. The world began again. Zeus, now king of the gods, a storm walking in human form, stood before her. Hera, radiant yet quiet, stood beside him. Not yet a queen, not yet a wife, but already something eternal. Zeus looked at her like lightning studying the horizon. Curious, inevitable. But Hera, she was patient. She had known silence since before time had names. The poets will tell you he courted her with storms and gold. The truth is quieter. Zeus became a trembling little cuckoo bird, soaked by rain, lost in the vast gardens of Olympus. Hera, moved by compassion, held the tiny bird to her chest. And then, as all magic does, the bird shimmered and transformed back into Zeus, smiling, triumphant, impossible to resist. She should have been angry, perhaps she was, but the story of Hera begins there, not in conquest, but in a quiet, reluctant love. Their union was divine. The heavens sang, the earth blossomed, and Gaia herself, the earth, gave them a gift. A tree bearing golden apples, symbols of love meant to last forever. For a while Olympus knew peace. Hera walked among the clouds, a silent guardian, her presence shaping order. Zeus, the king of storms, ruled with force, while Hera ruled with patience. Her voice was the quiet law beneath thunder, her gaze a balance to chaos. Yet even in this calm, Hera felt the first stirrings of unease. Love, she realized, is never just a promise, it is a test. She would notice the way Zeus's eyes wandered, the subtle tilt of his smile when he noticed another beauty. She sensed the seeds of betrayal before they had even been sown. One evening, she stood alone on the highest terrace of Olympus, the sun setting, painting clouds with gold, and beneath her, the world was alive. Humans laughing, lovers holding hands, unaware of gods or storms. Hera felt envy, not of their power, but of their simplicity. They could love without eternity watching, without fate waiting. "We, the gods, are eternal," she whispered. "And perhaps that is why we can never truly rest." The next morning, Zeus appeared, smiling as if nothing had changed. But Hera knew something had. The seed of eternity's challenge had been planted in her heart. Time passed. Festivals filled Olympus. Laughter echoed through marble halls. Yet Hera's heart flowed like a quiet river, unseen, beneath it all. She wandered through her golden gardens, touching the leaves of the sunlit apples, and sometimes she would pluck one and hold it to her chest. "If only love were eternal," she whispered. "Like these apples, beautiful yet untouchable." The wind stirred, the stars blinked awake, and Hera understood a truth that mortals would never know. Love is a chain, not a crown. She had been forged in darkness, tempered by patience, and now, standing among the golden light of Olympus, she realized that the quiet strength within her was greater than any storm Zeus could summon. Night fell. The golden apples glimmered in the fading sun. The wind brushed against her hair, soft as memory. Hera looked up at the sky and said, "Love is not eternal, but I am." The universe answered with silence. And above the clouds, the Queen of Olympus, alone yet unbroken, breathed, and in that quiet her story had only begun. They say that power has a cost, and love, even more. Hera had stepped into her place as Queen of Olympus, crowned not by choice but by destiny. Yet already she felt the edges of eternity press against her heart. To mortals, she was majestic, untouchable, flawless. But beneath the golden robe and polished crown, she carried a fragile, trembling longing, the weight of a heart that could not remain silent, even under divine law. In the beginning, Zeus had seemed enough, his laughter electric, his presence a storm she could lean into. And yet, gods are restless by nature. The very soul that had freed her from darkness now sought light elsewhere, drawn to every beauty, every fleeting moment of mortal charm. Hera watched silently, the first sparks of jealousy flickering inside her like candlelight in a vast, dark hall. She did not rage immediately. She observed. She calculated. She waited. Her first confrontation with betrayal came softly, in the form of Io, a mortal woman touched by Zeus's wandering desire. Io had no idea of the storm that watched her from Olympus, no inkling that the Queen of Gods was tracing every step of her fate. Hera's hands, elegant and slow, transformed Io into a white heifer, fragile and helpless, a living symbol of the goddess's silent wrath. Yet, even as the punishment was carried out, there was a whisper of sorrow in Hera's heart. She had not sought cruelty. She had sought justice, a balance between divine will and personal pain. The palace of Olympus never slept. Golden halls echoed with laughter, with whispers, with the soft crash of distant storms. And Hera, Queen of Order, walked among the corridors like a shadow, graceful and unyielding. She spoke rarely, but every word she offered shaped destinies. When Zeus was distracted by mortal delights, it was Hera who ensured the threads of Olympus remained unbroken. Yet jealousy is a river, and rivers carve valleys in stone. Hera's feelings for Zeus twisted, turned, and grew, not into hatred, but into a quiet, unrelenting storm. When mortal lovers bore Zeus's children, each one a reflection of his desire and her exclusion, the queen's heart clenched with both pride and grief. Semele, mother of Dionysus, Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis. These names became marks upon her memory, reminders that even gods cannot escape the reach of mortality's pain. And then came Heracles, the strongest of mortals, whose very name bore her glory, yet whose existence mocked her pride. The glory of Hera, they called him, but he was born of another, a living testament to Zeus's wanderlust. Hera's response was neither casual nor petty. She placed trials in his path, subtle and relentless. Snakes at his cradle, storms in his journey, hardships that tested flesh and spirit alike. Yet, even in her wrath, there was a strange tenderness. For through adversity he grew, and in that growth the reflection of her own indomitable will. Sometimes, Hera would retreat to the clouds, her mind wandering across the world of mortals. She watched couples in quiet meadows, their laughter soft and fleeting, children chasing fireflies under fading sunlight, lovers holding hands as the ocean's edge swallowed the last of the day. She felt a pang, not envy exactly, but longing, to love without eternity watching, to grieve without consequence, to rest without purpose. These were luxuries mortals could afford, but gods carried the weight of eternity like chains. Her days were punctuated by the delicate balance between rule and feeling, between order and desire. She ruled over marriage, fidelity, and the sanctity of oaths. She taught mortals the strength of commitment, even when her own vows trembled under the strain of Zeus's infidelities. Olympus itself became a mirror of her inner struggle, magnificent, ordered, yet fraught with hidden tension. There were nights when the Queen of Gods walked alone through her golden halls. Moonlight poured across marble floors, painting shadows that seemed to echo her thoughts. She would pause beside the garden where the golden apples shimmered like captured sunlight. Her fingers traced their curves, lingering over the brilliance of eternity she could touch but never consume. In such moments, she whispered to herself, "I am the keeper, the witness, the one who bears what none else can endure." Even the storms began to speak to her. Thunder rolled softly above the clouds, a conversation between her heart and the sky. Sometimes she imagined Zeus beside her, whispering apologies the wind could carry. But Olympus was not a place for apologies. It was a place for vigilance, for cunning, for the quiet, unyielding reign of the queen who had learned to survive in shadow and light alike. Hera's love for Zeus, paradoxically, became the source of her greatest power. In watching, in waiting, in shaping destinies, she honed an understanding of fate that surpassed all others. Each betrayal was a lesson, each deception a guide. She became not just a goddess of marriage, but a goddess of insight, one who could see the currents of time and desire, the hidden movements of both mortal and divine hearts. And yet, she remained human in the ways that mattered most. She felt sorrow, longing, and the ache of impossibility. She yearned for connection, for recognition, for a love that might match her own depth. But the gods, she realized, are cursed with eternity, unable to possess fully, yet forever witnessing. She carried this knowledge with silent dignity, walking Olympus with a grace that hid both her fury and her grief. Even as Heracles completed his labors and Dionysus took his place among the immortals, Hera's watchful gaze softened only slightly. In her silent moments, she allowed herself to feel a subtle pride, not for the triumphs of her enemies or even of her husband, but for the endurance of her own spirit. In surviving the constant tests, the constant betrayals, she became a quiet testament to resilience. Sometimes, she would pause in her palace gardens, the golden apples glinting in fading sunlight. The wind would stir, teasing her hair, whispering of distant lands and mortal lives. She would look out over the horizon, across mountains and rivers, and murmur softly, "I am the witness. I am the queen. I am Hera." Above the clouds, where no mortal could follow, she walked alone, carrying both the weight of Olympus and the fragile thread of her own heart. And in the quiet of night, when lightning slumbered and stars began to awake, she felt the faint satisfaction of a lesson learned. That power, patience, and pride are sometimes intertwined with pain, and that true strength is born of endurance, not triumph. This is Hera's crown, forged not in gold alone, but in the quiet, relentless trials of heart and spirit. And as the night stretches over Olympus, the Queen of Gods stands tall, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and wisdom, her presence a silent command over everything below and above. She is not just the goddess of marriage. She is the eternal witness, the enduring queen, the force that watches, shapes, and waits. Calm, sovereign, and unbroken. They say that even a queen's patience has a breaking point. For Hera, that breaking point was not sudden. It was a slow, simmering fire, born from years of betrayal and silent sorrow. Zeus, the king of gods, continued to wander, his desires spilling into mortal lands, his children multiplying beyond the count of stars. Each new life, each new love, was a reminder of her solitude, a whisper of injustice she could never fully erase. Her wrath was neither impulsive nor careless. It was calculated, deliberate, and in its quiet menace lay a lesson for gods and mortals alike. The first spark came in the story of Semele, a mortal woman whose heart was brave yet fragile. She dared to love Zeus wholly, without fear of consequence. Hera's shadow fell upon her, subtle at first, a quiet manipulation that would test the limits of mortal courage. Semele gazed upon Zeus in all his divine form, and her human heart could not endure the sight. The flame of life flickered and extinguished, leaving Hera neither cruel nor triumphant, but resolute in her lessons of consequence and vigilance. Next came Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. Hera's jealousy was not blind rage, but a disciplined storm. She barred Leto from resting on land, sea, or air, forcing her to wander until the goddess found refuge on the floating island of Delos. Even in this act, Hera's wrath was entwined with precision. She did not destroy for pleasure. She shaped destiny, molding trials into tests of resilience. Her power was the invisible hand guiding the world, sometimes with mercy, sometimes with iron. But it was Heracles, the strongest of mortals, who became the living embodiment of her anger and endurance. Born of another woman, yet carrying the name Glory of Hera, he was both her torment and her legacy. From the moment of his birth, Hera's wrath was immediate. Serpents sent to his cradle, storms unleashed upon his early journeys, and challenges designed to push his mortal frame to the limits. Every act was precise, every action a testament to her cunning. Yet even here, in her most severe trials, there was care hidden beneath fury. In shaping him, she shaped a hero whose strength would echo through eternity. Hera's rage was not always outward. Often, it coiled quietly within her, a serpent of thought and strategy. She moved through Olympus like a shadow, unseen yet felt, her presence a constant reminder to gods and mortals that even divine power has boundaries. She taught obedience, respect, and caution, and those who underestimated her did so at their peril. The whispers of fear and awe followed her like the scent of jasmine after dusk. Subtle, pervasive, unavoidable. Her wrath did not stop at mortals. Zeus himself felt the weight of her strategy. Each affair, each betrayal, was met with a combination of patience and retaliation. A slow burn that reminded even the king of gods that he was not beyond consequence. The balance of Olympus shifted slightly with every calculated act, every quiet intervention, every lesson delivered through storm or trial. Hera wielded power with intelligence, a mind sharpened by sorrow, a will tempered by eternity. Yet within her, there was more than vengeance. In quiet moments, she would walk among the clouds, her gaze drifting toward the mortal world below. She observed lovers in fleeting moments of innocence, heroes struggling against their fate, children laughing unaware of the divine hands shaping their destinies. These observations were not trivial. They were a reflection of Hera's depth, the awareness that her wrath, though mighty, was part of a larger, intricate balance. She governed not only punishment but guidance, not only justice but foresight. The Queen of Olympus, despite centuries of betrayal and testing, never lost sight of herself. Her power was absolute, but it was also informed by empathy, understanding, and an enduring sense of order. She learned the precise moments to strike, the subtle ways to teach, the quiet methods of ensuring that lessons were remembered long after the thunder faded. There were nights when the storms themselves seemed to converse with her. Lightning arched across the sky, thunder rolled softly through the clouds, and Hera listened as if hearing secrets whispered by time itself. She would raise her hand, and even the storm obeyed, bending its path to reflect the subtle nuances of her will. In these moments, she was not just a goddess of vengeance, but the living embodiment of cosmic equilibrium. Heracles, eventually grown, would face the culmination of her wrath in the trials that became legend. And yet, when he completed his labors, something remarkable occurred. Hera, who had orchestrated his suffering, welcomed him into Olympus. The act was quiet, unspoken, and powerful. It was not forgiveness, nor was it surrender. It was the acknowledgement that endurance and struggle have their own divinity. In her eyes, even her adversaries could be elevated, shaped by the rigor of her guidance. In the silence after storms, Hera often walked alone, her golden crown reflecting the faint light of distant stars. The gardens of Olympus shimmered, the peacocks fanning their brilliant tails in respectful vigilance. Each movement, each glance carried weight, the weight of centuries, the weight of observation, the weight of a heart that had learned both suffering and triumph in equal measure. Her wrath, tempered by wisdom, became her most potent tool. It was never merely a reaction. It was an instrument of order. Each act, each subtle interference, shaped destinies and kept the world in precarious balance. Mortals and gods alike learned to measure their desires against her patience, to anticipate the quiet storm that followed every slight, every injustice, every betrayal. Yet Hera remained not only a goddess of vengeance, but a goddess of understanding. She watched the ebb and flow of human life below, the triumphs of heroes, the failures of kings, the innocence of children, and she remembered the lessons she had learned in silence. Life, she realized, was a series of trials, some chosen, some inflicted, and it was in enduring them that true power emerged. As night fell over Olympus, the Queen of Gods stood alone in her palace. The air shimmered with the faint light of stars, the distant roll of thunder a gentle echo of her will. She raised her eyes to the horizon, reflecting on the countless lives shaped, the countless hearts tested, and the quiet victories she had won without fanfare. Hera, the eternal queen, was not merely a figure of wrath. She was the guardian of balance, the witness of consequence, the living testament that even divine power carries the weight of restraint and wisdom. Her story was etched into every storm, whispered in every wind, and reflected in every fleeting moment of mortal struggle below. And so, as Olympus slept, the wrath of Hera lingered, calm, deliberate, and eternal. It was a wrath that did not destroy indiscriminately, but guided, shaped, and taught. It was the wrath of a goddess who had learned that true power comes not from fury alone, but from patience, intelligence, and the quiet strength to endure all things. There are gods who rule with thunder, and gods who rule with fire. But Hera, she ruled with the weight of eternity itself. Time passed over Olympus like rivers over stone, yet she remained constant, unyielding, sovereign in every glance, every movement, every breath she took. She had known betrayal, loss, longing, and rage. She had watched the world shift beneath her feet and felt her heart stretched between love and indignation. Zeus, with all his charm and mischief, continued his wandering ways, but Hera had grown beyond anger alone. Her patience had become her weapon, her wisdom her shield. She no longer reacted out of jealousy alone. She acted with purpose, shaping destinies with precision. During the War of Troy, when the mortal world itself was caught in the grasp of fate and fury, Hera moved like the shadow of inevitability. She guided allies, manipulated outcomes, and ensured that every piece on the mortal chessboard served the purposes she envisioned. Not out of cruelty, but from the quiet insistence of order, the knowledge that chaos unchecked could devour even the gods. The halls of Olympus echoed with quiet whispers. Athena, Poseidon, Apollo, even Zeus himself learned to measure their steps in her presence. Hera did not need to raise her voice. The calm command of her gaze was enough. She was the goddess who could inspire fear, reverence, and loyalty, all with a single measured glance. Yet beneath this exterior of unshakable authority, there was a depth few ever glimpsed. In the solitude of her golden gardens, when the peacocks fanned their iridescent tails and the wind carried the scent of eternity, Hera allowed herself reflection. She thought of the children she had shaped through trials, the mortals who had flourished or faltered under her subtle influence, the endless dance of love, betrayal, and endurance. She had lived long enough to see the consequences of every action, every decision, every silence she had maintained. And she had learned that true power was not in dominance, nor even in punishment, but in understanding, in knowing when to act, when to wait, and when to let fate itself unfold. Her crown glimmered, but it was more than gold. It was centuries of wisdom, of lessons hard-earned, of patience tested beyond the measure of time. She was the queen who had endured everything. The wandering desires of her husband, the challenges of mortals and immortals alike, the endless demands of rule. And yet, she was still unbroken, still magnificent, still Hera. Some nights, she would stand at the edge of Olympus, gazing down at the mortal world, and smile softly. She saw the tiny sparks of courage, the flickers of love, the moments of quiet triumph, and in each, she saw the reflection of her own eternal spirit, enduring, guiding, watching. Hera's philosophy was simple, yet profound. The world is a balance of joy and sorrow, love and loss, power and restraint. To govern, one must not only wield authority but understand consequence. To endure, one must accept both suffering and beauty, for they are intertwined like the roots of the oldest tree. And to remain eternal, one must carry both strength and grace, without faltering, without yielding to fleeting whims. The golden apples in her garden gleamed like fragments of captured sunlight. She walked among them slowly, deliberately, aware of every rustle of leaves, every soft beat of wings. She could have ruled with fury alone, punishing those who dared defy her. But she chose restraint, for there is a higher art in knowing when not to strike, in understanding that true dominion often lies in patience. Her presence was a constant, quiet force. Zeus, for all his power and charm, had learned over centuries that Hera's will was not to be challenged lightly. The storms she could summon were not merely natural phenomena. They were lessons, reminders, and sometimes subtle guidance to keep the world in balance. And yet, for all her might, she was not without her moments of vulnerability. The echoes of longing and love remained, softened now by wisdom but never fully erased. She remembered the early days, the first breath of freedom, the slow awakening to light, the trials and betrayals that had shaped her. These memories were both a burden and a treasure, and she carried them with silent dignity. Even in her solitude, she was never truly alone. The peacocks, the gardens, the winds, and the stars themselves seemed to move in harmony with her presence. The weight of Olympus rested lightly upon her shoulders because she had learned the secret of true power, to move with the currents of time, to shape fate without forcing it, to endure without breaking, to guide without dominating. Hera's legacy was not written in mortal history alone. It was etched into the very fabric of the universe, in the subtle turning of events, the quiet shaping of hearts, the invisible threads of destiny. She was the eternal queen, the guardian of balance, the witness to all, and the silent force that ensured that both gods and mortals could find their place within the tapestry of existence. The night stretched endlessly over Olympus. Hera stood in her garden, golden crown catching the faint light of distant stars, peacocks fanning silently around her. The wind whispered across marble and leaf alike, carrying the secrets of time and the distant murmur of mortal lives. She lifted her eyes to the horizon, calm, sovereign, eternal. "I am Hera," she whispered softly, her voice barely stirring the night air. "I endure, I witness, I govern, I remain." And in that quiet, the universe itself seemed to pause and listen. The stars twinkled in acknowledgement. The wind softened, and Olympus, vast and eternal, bowed not in submission, but in reverent understanding of its queen. Hera, the eternal, unbroken, and infinite, her story now complete, echoes through time, not as a tale of mere wrath or jealousy, but as a testament to endurance, wisdom, and the quiet, unyielding strength of a goddess who bore the weight of eternity with grace.